Hi Everhouse, I'm Sarah and this is Rick, and this is our house on Old Mill Street. We bought this house in 2013. It was unconverted. It's a 300-year-old house of character, townhouse. No one can really decide because it's got elements of both. When we had the opportunity to buy this place and work on it, Richard had me very much to deal with during the process. I am a collector/hoarder, depending on which way you want to look at that. And I had actually been collecting stuff even when I was living, at my parents' house. I had been collecting prints and little bits and bobs from flea markets and marketplaces with the intention to eventually put them into this house that as yet had not come into being at that stage.
I think the most interesting part about the house is the history of the house. The room we're actually in at the moment is 300 years old. But then you move to the front, a bomb fell on it during the war. The part where we have the stairs was roofed over at a later stage, and then we added the last floor on the very top. So now you have a set of eras in one house.
It is a big mix, so Eclectic is the name of the game here, and it's a lot of collected and found items from travels as well as from Malta as well. We like to visit this flea market which is in France, and we were there one day and Richard said half a word to me that we could sort out a container to bring larger pieces, and that includes my workbench in the studio, and that's an old counter in an épicerie, so in a spice shop, and it's one of my favorite pieces. And also the dining table and chairs, which are Swiss 1960s design, which we were very much in love with as soon as we saw. I'll have to be honest, the mid-century modern aesthetic is much more Rick's than myself. I'm a bit more antique-y. So, the antique carpenter's bench, which we turned into a vanity in the bathroom. And the bench that we have in the living room also are more kind of what I brought to the project. And then our styles really mishmashed there.
We really brought both of our characters together from an aesthetic point of view and from a practical point of view. So Sarah brought in the beauty, the aesthetics, the fact that the house looks so good and always feels good. And I brought the practical side, so I wanted the house to have all the comforts. So we have double glazing throughout, we have good electricity pass throughout and networks. There's everything that you'd want in a modern house. And all the aesthetics that you'd expect from a house of character, and that probably is where the beauty of this house really lies.
The hotel key cubby is a very particular piece as well. I was talking to my dad, who works in a hotel in Aura, and he was telling me how, they were going through this big renovation, and I had grown up with obviously visiting my dad at work and seeing this key cubby where they would put, all the old keychains for the rooms. And I asked him, you're replacing the key system now, you're going to use cards, no? Very long story short, we showed up and brought them home with us, and now it is split up in two, and we use it for the spice rack in the dining room and also for haberdashery in the studio. The wardrobe was a big project. The room is actually 4 meters high. I wanted to figure out a way to really make the most out of the height, but obviously in keeping with this, aesthetic of not wanting too many modern elements in the space. The doors actually came from St. Patrick's Boys' School in Sliema. They were quite beaten up, painted green, although that was only the last layer. I actually tried to restore one of the doors myself, and it had so many layers of paint that I quickly gave up. When it came to the bath, I just had this idea in my head that I wanted a freestanding bath. Our search took us to Italy, and we chose the same RAL color that we used on our front doors. And it's a really nice, vibrant shade of blue. It gives you that Mediterranean aesthetic, which, bath, we don't have a pool, so close enough.
We don't have much outdoor space down here, but we compensated for it by choosing to not build the entirety of the top floor. We entertain over there, we have barbecues, and it's always so beautiful because the whole of Mosta tends to be quite dark and you just have the dome, which is lit in summer, so it's always beautiful and peaceful at night. One of the things that most people notice is the concrete flooring, and that is a question of contention because some people expected us to preserve the floors that there were in the house. In the kitchen itself, there wasn't much to say. It had been replaced and it was horrible tiles. The only good tiles we had were on the left side of the living room, so when you come in from the main door, we removed the tiles that we could remove, saved them, cleaned them from the back by hand. I actually cleaned them myself, and reused them in the small guest bathroom down here. One of the biggest challenges is light. So we did add lots of windows throughout the house. We added 3 skylights. Sarah wanted windows out onto the yard, so we managed to get from one tiny window on top to 2 giant windows that are just over 2 meters high, which changes how you can enjoy the house.
I appreciate local makers, local arts, independent designers, small shops. We actually spoke to young Potter at that time, he was still studying. He created this lovely dinner set for us that's completely handmade, and again, you know, trying to really bring as many local design into the place.
One of the few aesthetic choices that I wanted to inject into this house was some of my father's art. We have some of his paintings throughout the whole house, and the only reason I would want a bigger house is to have more space to display more of his paintings. Having his art over here brings a sense of comfort and brings a sense of familiarity to the house, even though we live here, and it just makes home feel like home.
We have now been on Old Mill Street for 5 years. It has just been the best 5 years. Our relationship has really grown here as well. We got married last year, and it's just, you know, I always have really fond memories of this place already.
Hi Everhouse, I am Joanna, and this is my house in Valletta. The first time I saw this house, I told the agent exactly like this, but 1 meter wider. It's like a pencil, very, very tall, very narrow and very deep. I was fortunate enough to work with the architect Simon Grech, who managed to get a lot of light in the house and also design the house around me and the things I love. The top floor of the house, its ceiling had caved in. In fact, the house was full of pigeons with pigeon excrement all over the walls. The fact that that space had no ceiling gave us the opportunity to intervene with this emulation of traditional ceilings, but replacing the wooden beams with concrete and the stone slabs with glass slabs. And they function beautifully because there is always light but never direct sunlight. The dimensions of the glass came from the dimensions of the treads of the stairs. The staircase, which is hanging from the ceiling, is in steel. Everything is a game. It was like, oh, and it can also do that, and we can also use this for that. For example, the glass on the very top is like a dance floor, and you can observe what's going on underneath. The renovation happened quite organically and created with a lot of playfulness. For instance, with the dining table, where I wanted to be able to seat 15 to 20 people, but not have it stand in the center of the room to entertain standing up. The house originally had 4 floors, including a basement, but the neighboring houses were 1 floor higher, so there was an opportunity to build an extension on top. Eventually, I had the opportunity to purchase the house behind me, so we did an extension backwards, and the main reason for this was to extend the terrace. We had a small terrace, and the idea of having an extra 40-50 square meters of terrace was a dream. Once you have the opportunity to see the sea, it's very hard to get away from it. It has a magnetic quality. It's designed to function so that we can have our normal living spaces there, so there's spaces to lounge and relax. I didn't want an awning or shade of any sort, so outside is there to appreciate the sky, the full extent of it. The terrace, I believe, is about 70 meters from sea level, so it's almost like you're on the 21st floor or something of a high-rise. The dining table on the terrace was originally a Glass Italia table, but unfortunately, because of our heat, the legs fell apart and broke. We repurposed the tabletop by getting beautiful green marble legs designed, and the result is wonderful. Architects come up with such fantastic solutions. It doesn't have to change the cost so much every time. Our bedroom was on the first floor. I loved it. Mellow light, a lot of space, a lot of depth. When we made the extension, I gave my beautiful old bedroom to my daughter, and we decided to move upstairs because I wanted to experience the best part of the house constantly. The extension was designed in collaboration with another architect, Jens Brunslow. Somehow we managed to make the division openable, to be able to appreciate the full length of the space, to get light from 4 aspects, which is very rare. Our soul is always happy when we are in a beautifully lit space. The bedroom, designed by Tom van Malderen, it's a very, very large headboard which wraps around the bed, takes away from the coldness of materials such as concrete and marble. Another object I love is a 100-year-old French bath I once found online. It was ridiculously cheap to buy and get delivered to the country, but cost 3 times as much to deliver it into the room and move it around while the works were happening. I am obsessed with art. I cannot help myself. I focus on living artists. Artists need to be supported so that they continue producing, so that they can continue enriching the fabric of society. They all communicate something. There is no common thread really between them, except that they captured my attention and my imagination. I wanted to live with them. We didn't have any extra functions to assign to the ground floor. I took the opportunity to put some of the most maybe powerful artworks. If there was a reason why they're there, it's because of that. It's the only floor where there's nothing to do except either walk through it or sit down and stare. Art is what makes me proud to be human. The fact that we can produce art and communicate this way, for me, trumps everything else which humans can do. When I was thinking of what I wanted my kitchen to be, I decided to have it pretty much all open with hardly any closable storage. Things we use every day, one can make a choice for them to be beautiful. And they are a mixture of some design items, but mostly actually flea market treasures, which is one of my biggest passions. It is small enough so that you can function like an octopus and grab things, see where they are. It is facing the living area and elevated, so my partner, in fact, is usually the main cook, and we call him the dish jockey. It's almost like a DJ stand in front of the audience. Not only is there an island where you can interact, but also enjoy and be proud of what you're making. I fell in love with Valletta in my late teens. The city is what kept me in Malta. At first, I thought I needed to run away to be anonymous, but the moment I was anonymous, meaning that I would go out in the street and I would know no one, I realized how much I love the fact I can go out in the street and know everyone. Valletta is a beautiful fortress. I am fortunate enough that the house allows me to see about a quarter of the city, which is sparkling and beautiful and has art spaces, galleries, theaters, big festivals with a lot of social engagement, like carnival with floats and music and religious feasts, and I would not live anywhere else on the island, that's for sure. What's more exciting than thinking about how you want to live is designing where you want our children to grow up living. My son's room was originally the Sala Nobile, which was wider. There is a high-level bed, a mezzanine, so that the bottom is entirely a play area or a living area now that he is growing up. There is a very large hand-drawn map. It's around 100 years old. At some point was in the roads department during the British colonial times. This is my idea of a home, that it is a space which is a machine for my life, where I feel good in every square meter, be myself with others, and hopefully inspired by the experience which a space like this can help provide.
Good morning, Everhouse. We're Matthew and Mother Marco, and this is our house in Birkirkara. We're very keen on finding a house, not an apartment to live in, and we're very keen on the idea of renovating an old property. We wanted something with character, and a lot of the places we found that did have a certain amount of character weren't really suitably designed for kind of modern day living.
Matt likes to collect a lot of stuff, so we really outgrew our smaller townhouse that we had before. We wanted to have a bit of a bigger space to raise a little family. We have 3 bedrooms here, split over 3 floors, and it was a bit of a practical element that we wanted a bigger place.
I love the townhouses that I grew up in my childhood, and the sense of space and light and airiness, and how you can adapt those to modern living, and how you can contrast the traditional features of a townhouse with the modern interventions that you put into it. Emma's an architect by profession, so we set straight away on working on the plans and the layout for the kitchen and the dining area.
I really like to cook, since that's what I do. I own Emma's Kitchen, and Matt loves to cook as well. So we really focused on the kitchen and dining area. Apart from cooking, we really like to entertain. The dining room was actually the original kitchen and toilet. So what we did is we opened up both walls in the dining room to let in a lot of light, and we opened up one wall totally. The idea is to create an inside-outside space, so while you're eating you can almost feel like you're outside. And we opened up the wall between the dining and the kitchen as well. Entertainment was really our focus.
We found the place in a very different state to the state it's in now, and even the layout of the rooms was completely different. We wanted to let in a lot of light into the space.
For the living room, we wanted to create a dark, cozy space. They had split into a hall and then a smaller living room, which we eliminated, and we painted the walls and the ceiling a dark blue, as we wanted to create this cozy environment. The bedrooms are upstairs, so they're really full of light. The nursery was a labor of love. We spent a couple of weeks in isolation here before I gave birth, and we spent those weeks working on it together, which were really, really nice. We moved in here about 6 weeks before Sam was born, so it was very, very last minute, but we really wanted to be here and set ourselves up in our new space. It was quite a strange period to do the renovations, because we started works in March of 2020, which was as soon as COVID hit. We would speak to the builder on the phone, he would do the works throughout the day, and every evening Matt and myself would come over and see what he did that day, and we would joke that fairies were renovating our house, because we would never meet. Matt actually never met the builder, actually, till the very end of the project. Since we removed the toilet from what was the kitchen and is now the dining room, we needed to find a new space, and there was a sort of dead zone under the stairs. We wanted to give it some character, so we came up with the terrazzo and pink combination. What we really like about the old Maltese townhouse is the character that it brings. We love the high ceilings, the solid walls, the old Maltese tiles, and we've contrasted that with concrete floors, more modern materials in the Carrara marble countertop. This contrast of old and new that we really like, which sort of respects the old, but also brings it into the modern day lifestyle that we have.
Our home is pretty much a collection of things that we both like, and we've just had to bring into our home and found a way of curating them in a way that they work together. My wife tends to think of me as a bit of a hoarder, so I've become very conscious of the way I have to find something that has to fit within the home. A lot of the things that I look for have like a certain look to them, which I think contrasts a lot with what Emma looks for. And I find that the contrast between the two styles really works. Between clean and things which have a bit more wear and tear to them and a bit more of a story to them. So even if it's things like broken tiles on the floor, I'm happy not to replace them, even though it might be impractical, but I like the sound that they make. Growing up, I was really obsessed with insects and wildlife. I used to collect a lot of things as I went along, but it looks like a lot of junk. But then I've got my shelves where I kind of put this stuff into a place and it becomes like an explosion of a cabinet of curiosities. We love to fill our home with a collection of work by local artists. Due to my background and my profession, I particularly have a love for typography. So that passion led to me running Malta Type, and my interest in old typography and in old signage locally comes out, I think, in stuff that I fill my home with as well. Even if we're abroad, I start thinking of how I can bring it home and make it work. Some pieces will actually be quite large and I end up having to empty my backpack and leave stuff behind, much to Emma's dismay. It's a lot of fun because it's an ongoing project and it's something that changes organically as we change and as our lives change, to build something which is the best place for us to raise our family.
Hi Everhouse, I'm Bettina, this is my husband Paul, and this is our house in Sliema. Paul and I moved in here maybe 5 years ago. We first lived on the first floor, and then we decided to convert up here. We realized we love living in a small space, so this is essentially our whole living space now.
I really wanted to capitalize on the fact that there's a lot of light here because we're on a corner. We decided to go for the glass partition because it was the best solution to heating and cooling the space. We used double glazing as well, and it lets in the light from the skylight.
We're just drenched in sunshine every time of day.
A few years ago, my friend's grandmother passed on these doors to us. I didn't know what I was going to do with them. But further down the line, we decided we needed to build a wardrobe with them. It was quite a big project.
Fueled by pizza.
Fueled by pizza. The beauty of building your own furniture is that you can make whatever you want.
During COVID, we took on just this project of creating a wardrobe. A couple of weeks in, we were finally going to see my parents. Before my dad arrived, he was like, "Do you need me to pick up anything? If you have a hammer and or spirit level, bring them." And he saw this wardrobe. He's like, "You guys did all of this without those two tools." But it functions and we really love it.
Designing and building this house, I wanted there to be a clear distinction between the old and the new. That's why we decided to keep the exposed ceilings. Architecturally, this is a more contemporary design.
Paul had the bright idea of using this massive beam as a bookcase, but these were just something else we inherited from someone's nonno. Every time a house was coming down or someone's nonna was moving out, we'd get a phone call. "We have some junk in here, do you guys want it?" And we're just like, "We're coming," you know? And I don't think we've ever thrown anything away.
One of the items that was passed down was a G-plan chair from my grandfather's office in Valletta. There was also the bench, which was passed down from my mother's grandma, which was originally used in a church. The Sapienzas posters were sold in the 80s and the 90s and could be found in classrooms, kitchens, all around the island.
A recurring theme we have in here, I'd say, is the fish. The fish maybe came about from this poster that Paul spoke about. And I think we just spiraled from there. Everything has a fish on it now. I even found this marketplace fantastic find. We call him Marvin or Melvin, depending on the day. He was just 20 euros and he's just our piece de resistance of the kitchen. We love being surrounded by so much life, so we have plants in every nook and cranny that they'll fit in. We actually have a gigantic cactus downstairs. My parents were moving out of our childhood home, so we hopped into Paul's Smart and I just held it as we drove from San Juan to Sliema. It was a really, really cool way to say goodbye to that house, I'd say, and it's really nice just having it downstairs in the tiny pot that it was planted in probably when I was born.
A lot of the art that you see in here came from friends, local artists. Some items were found in the house when we purchased it. The first item that there was up here was the big painting by a friend of ours, Tina Mifsut.
Tina's a really good friend of mine, and she just needed a home for this painting to live in. And it's lived here ever since. It turned into our wedding gift from her, which was really amazing. Everything just snowballed as we went along, and Tina's painting was always a constant there. So I would say we owe a lot of the style in here to that painting, actually.
My family had a bookshop, which they started in 1905. I spent my childhood going into Valletta with my father, so it's a big part of who I am. A few months ago, I got contacted by a friend of mine passing in Valletta and noticed the tenants decided to change the sign and there was the original beneath it. But I'm glad that he got in touch with me because I managed to go down there and retrieve it.
We had just got a seat cushion that came with one of the chairs that we bought off Marketplace. We took it over to a paint shop and we were like, we want this on a bathroom door. And when the guy was spraying it, he actually called Paul up, this is definitely not the color that you want. And we were like, no, that's it. We have a tiny bathroom that's full of little bits and bobs in there. We also have a really fun soap dish that I bought purely because I think it resembles Paul. We have marbles all over the walls, fancy gold faucets. So it's bougie, but our usual eclectic. Probably one of the reasons we don't feel that this place is too small for us is because we have the outdoor area. We love hanging out there, we play cards all the time, we eat all our meals out there. I do a spot of yoga now and then. Old houses always need like constant TLC, and we'll probably be painting and sanding for the rest of our lives.
Hello again, Everhouse. I'm Thomas Camilleri, and this is Pablo, and welcome to Hamrun. This is an 1800s maisonette, and it's amazing because Hamrun is very largely untouched. There's this amazing high street, which is still very similar to what it was back in the 1800s. Luckily, it's not been turned into horrible high buildings like a lot of other places. This was a massive project for me. I mean, it's a very small place. It took over a lot of my life during lockdown. The ground floor is just essentially a long corridor that leads to the very small garden at the back. In the middle, there's a staircase that comes up, beautiful Maltese staircase, tarrac, and then goes on to both halves. There are 3 rooms on either side. This side is the street side, so it's a bit louder, it's more colourful, camp, fun. And it just worked perfectly to create these 2 self-contained spaces that, whenever I've got guests over, they've got their own breakfast room, so we don't need to be sharing the same space as well. And also each side just has such a realised character, and they're so different from each other. For me, it's the love of the process and just spending hours at markets and online looking for interesting items that will work together. I'm not really an interior designer where, I put together color palettes and whatever. For me, it's very much inspiration-led. With all of these items, there are two things that I really love about them. One is that a lot of them are reclaimed, things that would otherwise end up being thrown away. And everything has a story, which is so much more interesting than when you buy something which is new. And there's always a starting point. With this room, I remember my friend Godwin had messaged and told me, listen, somebody left this big framed carpet of a peacock out in the street in Floriana. Shall I keep it for you? So he kept it for me, and it's now the headboard of the bed. And then from that extremely camp, over-the-top framed carpet of a peacock came everything else in the room. So the bedside tables were stacked on top of each other, and they were just like a library filing system. I separated them and then got marble tops made for them. The mirrors were actually the wing mirrors of a dressing table, and the beautiful middle mirror had broken. I ended up using the side ones on either side of the headboard to go above the bedside tables. This mirror is brilliant. I've never seen anything that shape. Then I paired it with this telephone table, and the mirror looks like an open peacock's tail. So, it all ties in together. Those brass hooks by the door are actually curtain tiebacks. They were on the floor of the Birgu market. They kind of look like coral, so I just turned them upside up, and they're now coat hooks. As you saw when you came to see my place in Gzira, I love mid-century opaline lighting. And in fact, with all of the extra shades that I had from there, I ended up filling up the entire corridor downstairs. It's a bit of a difficult space because essentially it's just the passageway that leads to the stairs and then to the garden. So I did want to have a bit of fun with that. That's why with all of those glass shades I created that light feature on the side. And then eventually the owners of the old Pandora cane shop got in touch and they said, listen, unfortunately we're leasing out the shop and they're not going to be keeping the sign, and it's a beautiful 70s PVC sign, so that found a new home there. And then actually a few weeks ago, I discovered that they were getting rid of the old seats from the Silesians Theatre in Sliema, where we've done so many shows. And I picked up 2 rows of seats, and it was obviously a sign because wedged down the side of the seats were tickets for the 2020 Comedy Nights show, which were the last shows that we ever did there before lockdown happened. So they had to come back here. For example, these lights over here, I found that really fun pineapple-shaped light at the Leah Village Fair. And then I started noticing that, at the Birgu Market and on Marketplace, there were lots of other ones for sale, and I think they were quite popular in the 70s and 80s. So I managed to put together a set, so they're now kind of the same but different. Pure reclamation is this bookcase over here. My friend Jonathan was stumbling home, very drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he walked past a semi-demolished house in Sliema, and in the only bit that was not demolished yet, there was this bookcase as the only piece of furniture left, and the workers were leaving their thermoses and their clothes when they were getting into work there in the morning. And he was like, this is insane, this shouldn't be demolished. And him and his friend dragged it home at 2 o'clock in the morning. And now he's moved back to Scotland, so I am now the proud owner. This carpet, for example, it's my grandparents' old carpet. It's not the most beautiful carpet, but means quite a lot to me. And luckily it's big, bright, colourful, so it really goes with this side of the house. Even with this kitchen, for example, the units were in an old house in Fleur-de-Lis, and they were painted baby blue, which I loved. But then from the tiles I picked out a yellow, and that ended up being the colour in there, which I paired with a kind of more modern kitchen. And I love marble as well, so I added that counter and the backsplash. The kitchen's quite tight, so I really needed a tiny kitchen table. So I needed to find one that would be small and could fit perfectly. And I found this guy in Gozo, loves collecting, hates selling. So he's got these 3 garages full of stuff, and they're all full of woodworm. Normally you'd get a little palette knife and fill the little holes with this wood filler. I literally slopped it on my hand and I was just rubbing it in, on the legs. But it was worth saving because it's a really beautiful table. In there is really quite colourful and bright, and it's a perfect little kitchen, and I love using it. It's just incredible, the stuff that gets thrown away. I mean, these sofas now are really back in style and you find them for sale for crazy prices. But these were, I think, about €30 for the lot, 2 armchairs and a sofa, but they were in a really bad shape. And I bought some fabric online. Luckily it arrived and it was, so they're lovely, very comfortable. With this place as well, one of the main things that drew me to it were the tiles. Especially in this room, it's not often that you find a double border. I found this beautiful blue terrazzo, which I'd never seen before, terrazzo tiles, in a house in Strijbosch, which was an absolute hassle to get and to clean and to reuse, but so worth it. Even the unit underneath the sink is an old sewing machine. And then my friend Brendan, he made a few pink terrazzo pieces to kind of tie everything in together. And yeah, it's fun because it's, you know, baby blue, baby pink and white. It's worth the hunting and it's worth the carrying and it's worth the backache because that's the end result. I mean, obviously now I've got a bit of a reputation that I'm the guy you get in touch with if there's something being thrown away that shouldn't be. And this friend had messaged me and told me, I've just seen 2 beautiful Maltese doors in a skip. And I turned up with my Smart. Thank God it's a soft top because the hood went down and I managed to fit these 2 doors in the Smart. I didn't even need to replace any of the glass, nothing. Having the Maltese balcony on this side really adds to the very different energies that both sides have. So this side overlooks the busy high street. It's got all of this light coming in from this south-facing Maltese balcony. And then the other side overlooks the gardens at the back. I'm so lucky because I've got gardens behind my tiny garden, so there's still a lot of light from that side. I love maximalism, I love eclecticism. The other side was a bit more of an exercise in restraint and actually holding back. Do you want to check it out? Here we go. Lana, come on. When I bought this place and it was completely stripped bare, the tiles were all broken and plain, so I just started realizing how many people were throwing beautiful Maltese tiles away. Some of them are over 100 years old. That was an excellent opportunity for me to source second-hand Maltese tiles from other properties and then get them here to use here. In fact, there are these beautiful geometric patterned hexagonal tiles. These ones are from Ormi. With these monochromatic tiles, that kind of influenced the rest of this side, and being over the gardens and being quieter, it's a lot more masculine, it's a lot more monochrome. Yeah, it was a bit of an exercise in restraint from my end, since I generally tend to love maximalism and lots of colour. The bathroom is one of the most beautiful rooms because it overlooks the gardens at the back of the property. It's full of reclamation. When I found the bathroom originally, it was full of these British era white square tiles, which I couldn't salvage many of. But then I managed to get some from Birkirkara, from Zaytoun, from an orphanage here in Hamrun. I managed to put together enough to be able to have all of the white tiles being all reused. Art Deco clamshell lights, those are on the floor of the Birgu market. I love me a bit of reclamation. The steel and glass door in between the bathroom and the bedroom is there to bring in as much light as possible. Originally it used to be a very small door and a very small window in the bathroom. And are you not going to stay here? Why are you interrupting? The glass panes are actually salvaged from an old orphanage in Hamrun. I wanted fluted frosted glass, but nobody used to import it. My saint of a neighbour downstairs, Lino the frame maker, he actually helped me cut all of the panes of glass to fit all of the different spaces, and I fit them myself. And yeah, I think the end result's pretty sweet. That armchair in the bathroom, this woman in Strijbosch was getting rid of 7, and I got them sandblasted and powder coated so that we'd give them a few more years because they were quite rusty. They're extremely comfortable. And I was watching The House of Gucci, and yeah, there's this whole scene where Adam Driver and Lady Gaga are having a conversation in a farm on those chairs. So that was quite fun seeing them in that film. There's that frame, which I have no idea what it is. It looks like it's something from some sort of a stage production of Tosca. But it was in a furniture warehouse in Marsa. I fit a mirror in the middle and added a marble shelf beneath, so now it's a bit of a library. I found that pavilion, that banner, which is a wooden balcony banner. But it's very unique because Hamrun is the only village that celebrates San Gaetano. In Hamrun, you're either Tattamal or Tal Meskina. And Tal Meskina are blue and Tattamal are red. But this is green, which is very weird. Maybe it was made by someone who just wanted to remain very neutral and not offend either side and not get any eggs thrown at their balcony. I don't really hang it up on the balcony, but I think it makes a pretty sweet bed canopy. There were old cement tiles in the garden which were quite broken, but I managed to save a couple, which are framed back here. And so this is where Lazarus Tiles started, because I realized that there were so many tiles being thrown away. There's only 2 workshops in Malta that still make them, and they were just going to be lost forever. The garden is very, very tiny, but it makes me very, very happy. I think the fact that it's so tiny made me want to go supersize with everything that I put in it. You know, monstera, giant cacti, and I actually got to know of this garden in St. Julian's that is set to be demolished, unfortunately. And the man who used to live there was a huge plant nut. And he would collect plants from all over the world, including giant cactus. Planted them in the 70s, and they are huge now. And with my friends, we carried them all the way here. I mean, they weigh a ton. We needed a pickup truck for those, but then I managed to go back and save a long, very thorny one, but I managed to stick that in the Smart, and it's doing extremely well over here. And also the balcony that I added. I just wanted to have a space that you could be outside and really enjoy the garden from above. I managed to get a steel and glass balcony made to let as much light in downstairs. I got this lot of beautiful embossed tiles from St. Barbara Bastions. I managed to actually get enough to use for the garden. And then right behind it, there are more gardens. So even though it's tiny, you're still surrounded by greenery and the sound of birds. It's a little oasis. One thing I really enjoy is when I find things in different places, but they just work so well together. People always go, you know, so how do you find exactly what you need? And the thing is that I don't. And that is a big problem. I'm not very good at knowing exactly what I want, so I really like something and it really speaks to me. But then eventually, once you see everything together, I go, no, this is not gonna work, that's not gonna work. You have to be brutal. There were weeks of just selling stuff. I was scrolling on Marketplace one day and I saw this impractical coffee table. Somebody had actually taken the time to carve a piece of wood out into the shape of Malta. I obviously fell in love with it. Also, it's incredibly impractical. The second you put anything anywhere north of Shemshia, the whole table just collapsed. So I sawed the legs off and now it just lives on the wall, which I think is a bit more fun. This coffee table is actually an Italian design classic by Guzzini. My dear friend had it in his really lovely home, and then he moved and he said this, listen, nobody else is going to appreciate something like that as much as you will, so I would like you to have it. And so it very happily lives here now. I found this little round table which had 2 leaves on the end which folded down. And it's perfect because the way it fits against the wall means that it really helps the flow. So obviously you can pull it out and have the 4 chairs surrounding the round table, but generally it's just perfect where it is. The kitchen is very different to the breakfast room that's on the street side. First of all, I needed something that was robust and have more preparation space. I love that I managed to find this very monolithic kitchen. They're really well built. It's just a plain IKEA kitchen. This carpet is the only really big pop of color, I think, in here. I think it works because I think it contrasts well with the rest of it, and it's just so beautiful and thick and rich and a bit OTT that I really wanted it to work here. These guys were on a roof in Zaytoun. Luckily, the people who were restoring the house, for some reason, they just weren't particularly attached to these, and they're just so amazing. They might have formed part of a big frame of a large statue, perhaps surrounding a Madonna, where they'd be holding a crown, but they're just beautiful. I always kind of need a project in my life. I found this beautiful, very small shop in Valletta, which I'm currently renovating. But it's still early days and still very much a work in progress, so I won't talk that much about it, but it'll all be online. So feel free to follow me if you want on Instagram at the Lazarus Club. I'll have to invite you guys back there to check it out.
Hey Everhouse, I'm Alexandra and welcome to my Valletta home. The house is a little bit of a building embodiment of who I am, because it's very multifaceted. Different sections have different purposes, but it's very hard to separate the two of us. Each part represents a different part of what I do. Part of the house is used as a gallery. The gallery tends to kind of connect to the part of me which is an artist. The studios are sort of the part of me which is a creative that services clients. And here where we are, the top floor is my personal space. So it's my home. But there's very little separation between these parts. The house spans 3 generations of my family. So it was originally my grandparents' home, the house that my mother was brought up in, where herself and my father had their engagement party, where they left to their wedding in 1965. And basically the house stood empty for over 30 years, abandoned. Kind of started to slowly bring the house back to life, probably around 2007. The house is set on 4 floors, each of the floors being roughly 80 to 100 square meters each. I started fixing the house in stages, in the sense that I would kind of restore a section, make it function, and then restore another section, make it function. All the original tiles have been kept. There's fireplaces which are in the gallery. It was very important through this restoration process that the domestic aspect of the house is not eradicated. All the doors and windows, they're all original apertures. A proper electricity system was installed. Luckily, the house did not require any major structural intervention. The fact that I wanted to keep everything as original as possible meant that I even had to choose which rooms would serve which function without having to break the tiles. The kitchen was custom designed and built by my brother, Martin. My brief was extremely simple. I wanted a kitchen that didn't look like a kitchen. I'm not a person to spend a tremendous amount of time cooking, but it does still tend to be the space which everyone tends to congregate in. It is strategically placed in the middle of the living space, so automatically you seem to gravitate to that area. I really just wanted a space that is a space that you enjoy being in. I think it's a very different feel to being in the living room. Probably the living room visually is possibly the most beautiful space, but somehow I still prefer the feeling of being specifically in the room, which is the kitchen. To me, the living room space tends to be more the space where I would just relax, hang out. One of the rooms is actually a very light shade of pink, and that is because it used to be my grandmother's bedroom. It was just a very unusable type of pink for a gallery. I kind of muted that down as much as I could, but did not go to white because I needed to retain some kind of reference to its past. In 2013 is when I created Blitz, which is the second chapter of the gallery space. And Blitz has been running now for close to 10 years. What you see in the space is quite a mix of things. What's on the walls is my photography, stuff that I've shot, stuff which I've made in the darkroom. 2 of the major works which are in the kitchen are from a series I made, which is called Time Remapped. One of the works looks at very specific cult movies, and in the single work portrays the entirety of a film in still frames of lapses of every 5 seconds. The furniture is a very big mix of iconic pieces mixed with a few personal pieces. This piece is actually a piece of furniture which used to be in my parents' house. You'll notice that the structure, the tall bits, go halfway up the room, but where it was previously installed, it actually used to touch the ceiling. Over here, obviously, the ceiling is twice the height of most normal rooms, so it just kind of floats in there. It's a locally made piece. And in Malta, In the era where G-Plan was very popular, there were a lot of local carpenters who were replicating the style, and this was in fact made by one of these carpenters. My most favorite item in the house. The main reason is because it belonged to my father, but also even just aesthetically. Nowadays it belongs in my home and holds a selection of mostly gins. So it's gone from a radio / record player to a memory to a makeshift bar. When you open the side door, you see that the records had all the covers trimmed so that they can fit in the semicircle of the opening door. One of the hidden gems of this house, and maybe also a favorite, is the roof terrace, which spans the entirety of the top floor. It gives this feeling of being in the city, but having the outdoors. My partner and I were both craving outdoor space when we were forcefully inside, going out literally every couple of days and just buying more and more and more plants. Originally the space just started to get plants and trees, and now, over the past couple of years, it's actually really grown into a great little garden. For me, of course, it's a good thing that this house offers me so many different faces and different types of behavior that I can do and be in the space. The feeling of being indoors, but the feeling that you're in the middle of a vibrant city is something that suits me very much. I enjoy that. There is a very strong connection between the past and the present. You never know what the future holds, but I think something that would be very hard for me to walk away from.
Hi Everhouse, I'm Mark. Welcome to our house in Senglea. I got this place almost, I would say, accidentally 8 years ago. I met this agent and I gave him this impossible dream. Like, I'd love a house with a sea view or entertaining space, but I don't have much money. But then the next week he came, you've got to check this place out. And I was like, okay, there's something here, there's some potential here. My cousins happen to be architects and they're, I think, one of Malta's best. I handed them the keys and said, guys, you know me very well. Peter gave me this plan for this, dropping down these walls, and it was just absolutely ideal. We capitalized on the light coming through south-facing property, so it was Sandra's idea to widen the balcony, opening it up, and then to drop these two walls as well. It's also quite warm in winter as well, because just a little bit of sunshine makes a huge difference. The living area was downstairs, and this room that we're in was the main bedroom. And this open plan is great, because there's a lot of flows of energy over here. So we flipped it, and I'm close to the roof like this, and I entertain quite a lot. I've had parties here with 40 people inside, barbecues and whatnot. I love having a roof. It's my little barbecue area. Yeah, I think it was a good decision to flip it. This house was built in 1949. Senglea and the three cities were completely carpet bombed in the Second World War. So a lot of these places in Senglea were built in that era, which I think is a very cool era. You've got the beams all showing. It gives that really cool townhouse feel. When I sort of first bought the place, people thought I was crazy. People are like, no, you're not moving down south, mate. Like, you're not gonna last, you know? But I love it here. There's so much charm. Senglea has blossomed, bloomed into this fantastic place. It's being treated with respect. There's a lot of greed on the island, but I don't feel it much over here. I like sailing and I like surfing, so I have my sailing boat down here as well, which is super handy for me. I also love to surf. I have a little surfing magazine where I'm documenting surfers. I love humans, so I'm always getting people over. It gives me a lot of joy. I think humans are super cool. People just feel like they can relax over here, which is good. When I finish work, I want to just switch off and just chill. And this is where I do it, basically. I'm a writer by trade. I've been writing for many years. Mainly I focus on sports. You know, I wanted to give a gift to my son when he was born, and so I wrote a book called Vince and the Whale. Yeah, that's for him, so that, I don't know, one day pick it up, read it, and hopefully learn a couple of things. When I was looking for a property, I really wanted Maltese features, be it tiles or a Maltese back and a galleria. Luckily, I found one here which has a decent view. My architects decided to open up and really gave the space a better energy, a better vibe, more light coming through. That galleria has another feature. There's a shelf inbuilt on a drop hinge, I think it's called. So that used to be my office or my breakfast area. But now I've closed it and I pushed the table further in just because there's a bit more space like this. I love having people there, I love having conversations. If those walls could talk, you hear some crazy stuff. The old Maltese signs which I have, they were being thrown away. They were on the way to the skip, basically. And my friend invited me over to check out furniture which they wanted to get rid of. But I saw these wooden boards which I thought would make good shelving. He then told me they were old shop signs pre-World War II, taken down during the war. And I said, hang on a second, old Maltese signs, pre-World War II, these must be really cool, full stop. I hadn't seen them at all, I was just seeing the profile. So I said, keep all the furniture, just when I finish refurbishing, if you can, we'll send them over here. About 2-3 years later, I phoned, I said, Brian, what about those signs? He said, yeah, they'll be there tomorrow. And the next day, a big delivery truck came, and I remember uncovering them, and I was like, wow, these things are pretty cool. During the convenio, another fantastic story happened because my dad, who's not from here, came with me, and the owner of this house is looking at my dad with this look. And I'm like, here we go, there's some trouble here for sure. He goes, you're the Dutch guy who worked for Malta. And my dad goes, yeah. They used to work together 25 years ago, so it was amazing. So even during the period of sale, the guy trusted me with the key, so I can start measuring up and start dreaming. So I was very, very lucky. It was all an accident, but a happy accident, which is kind of quite a definition of my life, I think. I don't like things being thrown away. It keeps the cost down because everything was done on a shoestring budget. So a lot of the stuff here is basically reclaimed, secondhand, refurbished. I also happen to live next to the Birkirkara market, which became a problem at some stage because I was going every week buying ridiculous things. Every single piece here means a little bit to me. I want to support locals, but I'm very lucky that most of these pieces are done by my friends who are super talented and super inspiring to me. And each one I feel has an association with the artist or with a memory, with a place. I even have my son's pictures on the wall, and I think that's really, really cool. My friend in London, her friend, had a tattoo studio in Argentina. I remember getting in touch with this guy on Facebook, can I buy one of the flashes? And he sends me about 20 pieces, and that's great. Thank you. Gracias. The Riot sign, it's one of my favorite shops on the island. It's obviously a surf vibe to it. It's owned by a friend of mine. We became friends. He phoned me up, he said, hey, I'm getting rid of the shop sign, which I had previously thought I really love. It's a bit wacky, maybe not everyone wants a purple neon in their living room, but I just think it fits me and my crazy lifestyle a bit. Because this house is a bit small, it's stacked. It's very sort of slim and tall, just like me actually. So there's a lot of stuff hidden away. It's like a sailing boat. You've got to stow away certain things. So my son spends half his life here. I have to hide his toys as well sometimes, you know, so this place has a lot of hidden secrets too. I don't have any green fingers, but I love plants. I would love to have more plants, but I'm afraid I'm going to kill them all, you know. So this is where I'm going to be for now. Living in Senglea for me has been great because I have a few very close friends who live here. That's really great because you can just walk over to each other's house, have dinner and walk back. I like to cook and invite people over, and so the space gives me that area, that playground that I can. At one point it's like a revolving door, people just coming and going, and that's exactly how I like to live my life. I really do encourage people to live in the three cities, just because it's quintessentially very, very local, very Mediterranean. Malta's losing that touch of Mediterranean charm, but it's still maximized over here. And that's one of the reasons why I do love it here.
Hi Everhouse, this is Estelle and this is Noel, and this is our house in Birkirkara, Malta. Around 2015, I was looking for a property, something perhaps I could restore myself, even though the interventions are minor. It took 5 years. Majority of the alterations happened on the 3rd floor. It was divided into a small room and a very, very small workshop. The idea was to build through the terrace and drop the walls in between, so this would be an open plan. The bedrooms are downstairs. I went for an upside-down layout. There was a lot of discussion with family trying to convince me not to play around with the layout, but I'm happy that I persevered with this. The light was all up here. This was very important for me, that the place I'm going to be spending most of the time in has to have as much natural light as possible. I also tried to stick with the new being the new and the old kind of trying to remain old. Wherever there was tiling, I preserved. Wherever there wasn't, I introduced a new material. That was something I wanted to stick with, trying to preserve on some level what I had already found here without changing too much the character of the house. The bathroom previously was a kitchen, a tiny, tiny, tiny kitchen, and the sink remained in the same space. The feel up here is very different from downstairs. If it were up to me, I would have left much more exposed. My sister was studying to become an architect at the time, and she was all the problems that are gonna present themselves as you live in the space, and she was right. But this was a happy compromise. The whitewash and then the exposed concrete with the shuttering. The builder, I'm not sure he had worked around this before. I was quite taken aback with the type of wood that he was using. It was scraps. You can see the rawness, you could see, cement trickling through, like no love whatsoever. Some stains and marks. I think it's my favorite part now of the house, this mess. I tried to limit the amount of elements, concrete, wood and steel, and I tried to keep working with those 3 elements as much as possible. I bought the property for myself. The idea was that I would be alone, that there would be a guest bedroom, maybe turn it into a clinic and all of that. And then I met Noel. We were moving into the place as a couple, so my original idea kind of still held at that particular point in time. Then we decided to foster 2 boys. Things happened quite abruptly, so then we had to make some major changes to work out the space downstairs.
You flipped the layout downstairs.
Oh yeah, we flipped everything downstairs.
What was the bedroom became our study, what was the walk-in closet became the boys' bedroom, and what used to be the study became our main bedroom. When you go upstairs, the first thing that you see is the study. I work from home, so I spend a lot of time here. Being a product designer, I have designed this space to have everything I need really close to me. Since the walk-in closet, which then became the boys' bedroom, is relatively small, we had to sort of like think on how to make it expand so it doesn't feel too claustrophobic. One way we did that was to have 2 doors that open and extend into the study, so that then becomes their play area. We have a big shelf as well that we put all our books in, and even the boys can go and pick and choose their books from there before we go to bed and read the story. One other reason why we put the desk sort of like bang in the middle of the room is because A, I can greet whoever comes in, and B, when the boys are playing, I can sort of like have one eye on Figma and the other eye on them.
The staircases that I found here, I preserved them. There was a lot of discussion around the small staircase. It was very narrow, but I was adamant to keep it as is, and I don't regret it. Unless I'm carrying 2 shopping bags, then I do regret it. I did not try to create some kind of continuation between the staircases. What was new is new, and I went with the steel staircase. Almost the idea as well was to have some light that passes through the staircase and reflects onto the smaller staircase halfway through. The kitchen is somewhat unconventional. Everything was stuffed into an island. I have a very irrational issue with kitchens that are kind of stuck to walls. However, with that obviously came the problem of storage, which remains a very big problem because of the size of the house and because of open shelving, which means that things need to be placed nicely, need to be clean, and I need to hide my appliances away. The original idea was that the sink wouldn't be where it is, and the floor just kind of goes up over the kitchen and down. And instead I went for micro cement. I tried and failed to match the color, but I think it goes in really nicely. Still earthy anyway. I had already decided on birch plywood and the micro cement top, and I needed this idea of like a continuation. My dad did the structure for us, very, very simple structure, and it serves its purpose well.
We are pretty stubborn and we have our own design preferences. But we, I feel, managed to find where Estelle and I overlap, and we sort of like just ran with that. Being a bit of a minimalist, I struggle a bit with many items we have out in the open. We have to make sure that each and every item is in its place. Then again, it really helps you keep everything organized. Then, of course, since the boys moved in with us, that challenge grew threefold easy. Being kids, they need their toys, they need their stuff. And so we needed to be very creative with how we inject storage space into their tiny little bedroom, and of course, outside of that as well.
What's great about this space, it still worked. I mean, we've seen all these changes. The changes happened quite suddenly. The house just seemed to evolve, accommodate whatever it was presented with, which is quite fantastic, I think, about this place.
Subscribe to the Everhouse channel by clicking on the logo to receive updates on our latest episodes.